In this example, we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and we know one of the legs is 5 root 2. So let's set up our chart. Across from the 45 is S root 2. So the side across from the 45 is 5 root 2, so that's our S. So it's 5 root 2, 5 root 2, which means this side is also 5 root 2. And now we're going to try and find our hypotenuse. So I am taking 5 root 2, and I am substituting that whole thing in for S. So it's going to be 5 root 2 root 2. So 5 root 2 times root 2. Because I'm taking this S and I'm multiplying it by root 2. So for a 45, 45, 90 triangle, I take the short side and I multiply it by root 2. So 5 root 2 is 5 root 4, and then the square root of 4 is 2, and 5 times 2 is 10. So X is the hypotenuse, X is 10. In this example, we know the hypotenuse is 8 in this 45, 45, 90 triangle. So S root 2. This time we know the side across from the 90, we know the hypotenuse is 8. So if you remember, when we know the hypotenuse, we divide it by root 2 to get the side. So I have S root 2 equals 8. I'm going to divide it by root 2. I'm taking that hypotenuse and dividing it by root 2 to get the legs in a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So I have 8 over root 2. I can't leave that square root in my denominator, so I'm going to multiply by my fancy 1. I'm going to rationalize the denominator. I'm multiplying by root 2 over root 2. I take the square root out of the denominator and stick it on top of itself and multiply the numerator and the denominator by that square root. So in the numerator, I'm going to have 8 root 2. And in the denominator, I'm going to have root 2 times root 2, which is root 4, which the square root of 4 is 2. And now I have 8 root 2 over 2, and that reduces 8 over 2 is 4. So this is just 4 root 2. So that's my S. S is 4 root 2. So that means that this side is 4 root 2, and this side is 4 root 2. So those are my two legs of my right triangle. X is 4 root 2. So again, if you know the hypotenuse, you divide it by root 2. So I'm dividing it by root 2. If you know the leg, you're going to multiply it by root 2 to get the hypotenuse. So here I had to divide by root 2 to get the leg.